14 different slates of electors that show up for 7 different states. Pence was supposed to feign ignorance and go, oh, I don't know which ones are the real ones. I think after an hour, has the ability to call time and say, we don't know who the real electorates are. So we're gonna throw it back to the delegation, and the House delegation is gonna get to vote on who the president gets to be. I said this on election night, that like Pence was what stood between us and oblivion. They were just like private citizens that basically Trump's campaign got them together to just falsely certify that they were the electors. They faked all of it. Did the electors know they were lying? Yes. None of this is contested. This is a video of some of the fake electors. If Biden loses, can he just use this ruling to re-elect himself using Trump's tactics? What's the solution then?
I authorize SEAL Team 6.
It is simply the case that when a president is carrying out his...
But yeah, this... If people are gonna do this to me, I should just do it back to them.
We believe that if the official conduct, the immune acts in the indictment are stripped away, that Jack Smith doesn't have a case, that this case should be dismissed on that basis. I don't think there's sufficient private conduct here to support the indictment, to support the ongoing prosecution. And that's what we're going to be litigating in front of the district court now.
Even just the false slates of electors, you don't think that would constitute enough for a trial?
Well, we would say alternate slates of electors. And as we argued before the Supreme Court, alternate slates of electors have been a method used by previous presidents, most notably Ulysses S. Grant, to ensure the integrity of prior elections. So we believe the assembly of those alternate slates of electors was an official act of the presidency. That's what we argued before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has reserved that issue for determination by the district court, and we'll see how arguments fall in front of the district court.
Yeah, we've walked through those historical references here before. None of them compare to what we saw in 2020 with the fake slates of electors. But Will Sharf.
President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. President Trump is still liable for everything he did while he was in office as an ordinary citizen. Unless the statute of limitations is run, still liable for everything he did while he's in office. Didn't get away with anything yet. We have a criminal justice system in this country. We have civil litigation. And former presidents are not immune from being accountable by either one. President Trump is practically and morally responsible.
Based. What's the takeaway from last night for Smooth Brains? Is the president too powerful now, or are we fine? Well, I think the two huge things that are going to have to be determined now in future litigation is, one is going to be what counts as an official act. That's who the fuck knows, because I don't think the Supreme Court gave any guidance on that. No, that's probably going to be the big one. It's going to be what counts as an official act. And what's going to be the test for figuring out if the president has like acted in an official capacity or not. Is the lower court going to have to determine that now? So here's what of the 4 things that were brought up in the major opinion. The conversation that happened between Donald Trump and his attorney general. Well, maybe I'll finish reading this first, because we only got 2,000 people in here. I'll go over it.
This is the last year of a lame duck president, and if Ted Cruz or Donald Trump get to be president, they've all asked us not to confirm or take up a selection by President Obama. So if a vacancy occurs in their last year of their first term, guess what? You will use their words against them. I want you to use my words against me. If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination, and you could use my words against me, and you'd be absolutely right. We're setting a precedent here today, Republicans are, that in the last year, at least of a lame duck 8-year term, I would say it's going to be a 4-year term, that you're not going to fill a vacancy of the Supreme Court based on what we're doing here today.
So unbelievable.
That's going to be the new rule. When y'all change the rules about appellate judges and district court judges, to get your way. I thought it was a really abuse of power. And what you have done here is you've made the caucuses, the Republican and Democratic caucuses, are now not going to have to reach across the aisle when it comes to appellate judges and district court judges to get input from us, or we get input from you. So what does that mean? That we're going to pick the most hard-ass people we can find and dare somebody in the conference to vote against that person. You're going to have the most liberal members of your caucus pushing you to pick the most liberal judges because you don't need to have to reach across the aisle to get any of our input. And we'll do the same. So over time, the judiciary is going to be more ideologically driven because the process in the Senate now does not require you to get outside your own party. So I'll be fighting talk radio when somebody on my side puts up a nut job, and they will. And I'll fight if I think they're truly a nut job. That's going to happen on your side, too.
Has Lindsey Graham ever been married? I don't know, but I think he can get married now, right? Didn't the Supreme Court say that was okay? Lindsey Graham, 4 years later.
Any reasonable person could impose in terms of qualifications. I think you made every test in terms of disposition and character that the public could hope for in terms of having somebody sit at the table at the Supreme Court. You will be confirmed, God willing. You will have my full support. I see in you someone who's not only highly qualified to be in the court in every way possible, but somebody that has broken new ground in a positive way for the country. So what we will be doing now is go in closed session. The FBI evaluation will be presented to the committee. That's standard practice for every nominee. We will meet again here just in, where's the room? Dirksen G50. You will be with us. We do this for every nominee going back to Chairman Biden. And it is over. The hearing part is over. You can have 2 glasses of wine tonight.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll defer to Senator Durbin if he wants to go first.
Yes, I would just like to finish my thought, then we'll defer to Senator Durbin. The hearing part is over. You acquitted yourself well. But the journey you're about to take is going to be challenging. It's going to be rewarding. And may God bless you in this endeavor. Senator Durbin.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Based, or is it Bayzed? I don't actually know. It's Bayzed? How does that even make sense?
You have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you, but go home and go home in peace.
When Trump was giving this speech,
Ladies and gentlemen,
I didn't catch this when I first listened to this speech because I didn't know what was being schemed. Somebody at the subreddit pointed this out, though. It was very interesting. Hold on.
Republicans are constantly fighting like a boxer with his hands tied behind his back. It's like a boxer. And we want to be so nice. We want to be so respectful of everybody, including bad people. And we're going to have to fight much harder. And Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us. And if he doesn't, that will be a sad day for our country. Because you're sworn to uphold our Constitution. Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol. And we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over.
I don't think anybody knew really what this meant when he said this, but I realize now, and going back and looking over this speech, he was explicitly calling for that. He's referring to the electorate scheme here. That's what he's doing. But nobody's even cheering because nobody actually even knows what this like plot is. It wasn't publicized very much. I think there was a leak prior to the speech, like the Eastman memo, but nobody really knew. I didn't, at least. And it doesn't seem like it was getting much airplay for what the Eastman memo and everything was about. But this is him explicitly referring to that. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. And the idea was that Mike Pence was going to have to come through for us, meaning that Mike Pence was going to have to be the guy to toss the actual electorate slates and just count the ones that that Trump had the 7 different groups of people perjure themselves and say that they were the real electorate slates. Yeah, I didn't realize before that. So I didn't remember, but this is explicitly calling that out. That's hilarious and kind of sad, but.
And only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching.
How would Pence change anything if he is lawfully bound to acknowledge the approved electors? What Eastman and Donald Trump hoped to do in his attempt to soft coup the government, what his goal was there was supposed to be 14 different slates of electors that show up for 7 different states. And Pence was supposed to feign ignorance and go, I don't know which ones are the real ones. There's supposed to be a small debate in the Senate over what the real ones are. And then Pence, I think after an hour, it's written in the Electoral Bullshit Act or whatever, has the ability to call time and say, sorry, guys, we don't know who the real electorates are, right? Well, Pence could have just said, actually, I trust these. He could have just not opened the other ones and said, fuck it. But if you wanted to take it a step further, you go, oh, well, we don't know who it is. So we're going to throw it back to the delegation in the House of Representatives. And the House delegation is going to get to vote on who the president gets to be. Now, because the House delegation is split up just by states and not just by representatives, the Republicans have a majority technically in the House, even though the Democrats have more seated members. So the Republicans can declare Trump the president from the House because more individual states are represented in a House delegation when it comes to voting for president. So they could have basically made Donald Trump the president in the House after that. But when he wanted Pence to come through, these were the 2 ways that Eastman was theorizing the election could theoretically be stolen. Theoretically, yeah. Like I said this on election night, seriously, but not realizing how true it was that like Pence was what stood between us and oblivion, but in more ways than just refusing to call the election on the night of because Donald Trump didn't want the votes counted. Yeah, Pence could have theoretically just said, "Oh yeah, we're not going to count these electorate slates. We're going to count the other ones." In order to delay, they need the consent of both the House and Senate. Pence had no legal authority to delay unilaterally. Are you sure? Let me check the Eastman memo. I thought Eastman, I think, had a weird theory for why he might be able to do that. Let me check real quick. Oh, so Eastman's theory hinged on the idea that the Electoral Count Act was likely unconstitutional. He believes that this act wouldn't survive a challenge in court. And he's saying, so I think what you just said, I think might be provided in the Electoral Count Act, but Eastman believes that it's not constitutional. And he says, here's the scenario that we propose. One, VP Pence, presiding over the joint session, begins to open and count the ballots, starting with Alabama, without conceding that the procedure specified by the Electoral Count Act, going through the states alphabetically, is required. When he gets to Arizona, that's the first electorate slate that they faked. When he gets to Arizona, he announces that he has multiple slates of electors, and so is going to defer decision on that until finishing the other states. This would be the first break with the procedure set out in the Act, in the Electoral Count Act. At the end, he announces that because of the ongoing disputes in the 7 states, these are the 7 fake electorate slates that Trump had his cronies send, there are no electors that can be deemed validly appointed in those states. That means the total number of electors appointed, the language of the 12th Amendment, is 454. This reading of the 12th Amendment has also been advanced by Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe. A majority of the electors appointed would therefore be 228. There are at this point 232 votes for Trump, 222 for Biden. Pence then gavels President Trump as reelected. So it also relies on an alternative reading of the 12th Amendment to make this work as well, which would also probably have to run through the court. Because I think the 12th Amendment might require like a minimum amount of electoral votes, and if nobody gets it, theoretically there's no president or something. I don't remember this exactly. But they were going to read it basically another way. First time the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have such a majority, then the persons having the highest number not exceeding 3 on the list of those voted for its president, the president shall choose immediately by ballot the president, or something like this. Howells, of course, from the Democrats, who now claim, contrary to Tribe's prior position, that 270 is required. So Pence says, fine, pursuant to the 12th Amendment, no candidate has achieved the necessary majority. That sends the matter to the House, where the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. Republicans currently control 26 of the state delegations. The bare majority needed to win that vote. President Trump is reelected there as well. Because in the House, it wasn't just by number of representatives, it was by state delegations. That's important, okay? One last piece, assuming the Electoral Count Act process is followed, and upon getting the objections to the Arizona slates, the 2 houses break into their separate chambers, we should not allow the Electoral Count Act constraint on debate to control. That would mean that a prior legislature was determining the rules of the present one, a constitutional no-no, as Tribe has forcibly argued. So someone, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, etc., should demand normal rules, which includes the filibuster. That creates a stalemate that would give the state legislatures more time to weigh in to formally support the alternate slate of electors. That's the fake one, the fake 7 that were given by Donald Trump, if they had not already done so. When you say fake electors, you mean 6 different people pretending to be electors, or they just fake documents? They faked all of it. So the way that it works is in each of the 50 states, after your votes have been counted, the state procedures typically nominate they'll nominate some people to serve as the state electors. And what the electors do is they get together and then they write and they sign a document where they transmit it to NARA and to Congress. And they say, hey, this is how our state voted. Here's where our electoral votes are going. We attest to this under penalty of perjury that we are the duly appointed state electors. And here you go. Donald Trump had 7 different groups of people fake that certification and also transmit their votes to NARA and to Congress in order to cause confusion. That was the goal, basically. Nothing that I'm saying is none of this is like, well, I mean, you could say it's alleged. I mean, it's possible that all of it was faked. But the actual paperwork that the people all perjured themselves signing is all public.
Now,
so wait, who were those people? They were just like private citizens that basically Trump's campaign got together to just falsely certify that they were the electors that were appointed in their states.
Here also is Wisconsin, where we reported on their forgery last month.
So here on the left, this would have been what Wisconsin transmits to for their electoral vote, and then on the right was the fake one that is signed. Basically, everybody that was involved in this perjured themselves. They said, we, the undersigned, being the duly elected and qualified electors for president and vice president of the United States of America from the state of Wisconsin, do hereby certify the following. They lied about where they met, that we convened and organized at the state capitol in the city of Madison, Wisconsin. They didn't. A lot of these people were turned away. Fake electors try to get into building. Did the electors know they were lying? Yes. None of this is contested. All of this is just very, like, yeah, nobody, How have I not heard about this before? Because nobody talks about it because nobody knows how our election system works. Nobody knows how our electoral systems work. Nobody has any idea. So how would you even know? How would you begin to understand this? Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea. If I went on a Tim Pool show, I would only argue the elector scheme for 2 hours until he concedes to all of it. And he won't concede to any of it. And I'll just go over the details of this over and over and over and over and over again. How is this not proof of a coup? It is. It is a coup. It's not even... No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's not a coup. It is an insurrection because the final point of this coup attempt was a violent march on Washington. That was the final point of this. It was an insurrection, right? This was the legal part that had been satisfied to where they had all of the shit that they needed to have all the paperwork in line. And then the violence on the day of was supposed to pressure everybody in the Capitol building to go ahead and certify the other slates of electors. That's why Donald Trump invited all of his people there. That's why he gave the speech saying, we need to make sure, guys, we need to go here and we need to make sure we have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. We have to show strength. You have to be strong, right? The whole point of him inviting his crowd there, the whole point of them marching to the Capitol building was for them to pressure the congressmen, which is also the phone calls that Trump made when they were all cowering and when he was calling people and when Giuliani was calling people. They were saying, just certify the fake electors. That's what this was. But anyway, yeah, this is a video of some of the fake electors, I believe, trying to...
What did he say? He said we can't enter.
What I said was, for the Capitol Commission, for the governor's office, for the Speaker of the House, for the Speaker of the Senate, the Capitol is closed unless you have an office here that conducts business today, or if you are taking part in the Electoral College process. Anybody else is not permitted to come in.
They're here to...
These aren't electors. They weren't appointed by the state, and they're all lying when they say this.
Electors are already here. They've been checked in.
They're also electors.
Capitol is closed. All 16 electors that we've been advised by the governor's staff that we're going to be here to vote in the electoral.
Did any of the fake electors get perjury charges? I think that some of them might be roped in the Georgia RICO case. I don't know if they're targeting the fake electors or just the people. I think it was Chesborough or Chessman. What the f*** is the guy's name? I don't know if they went after the... in Arizona they got charged. In multiple states there are charges. Oh, okay. Maybe in some states they have charged him then. Is it Kenneth Chesborough? Did the Supreme Court ruling basically say his involvement in this is considered official duty? Who knows? When Trump was talking to his attorney general, his acting attorney general, Donald Trump told the acting attorney general, he said, you need to send letters to the states, these 7 states, and say, hey, we've got huge evidence of voter fraud. You need to flip your electoral vote. And the acting attorney general, it was either Rosen or Clark, he said, no, we're not going to do that because obviously we have no evidence of this. And Donald Trump said, I'm going to fire you. I don't want to make this coffee dude the attorney general then. This part is unconfirmed, but apparently half the staff in the White House threatened to quit. Like, this isn't happening. Or almost all of his White House staff threatened to quit out of this. And he's like, okay, f*** it. So he didn't do that. That conversation, though, where Donald Trump is talking to his attorney general about who he can fire and who he can hire, that is a core power of the president, meaning it is exclusively his. And the Supreme Court has ruled that conversation is granted absolute immunity. Doesn't matter what he said, doesn't matter what it was for, doesn't matter what it was right or wrong. It is above judicial review. It will never, ever, ever be a part of any sort of criminal indictment, and it is beyond being reviewed by any legal body as criminally indictable. So that's completely off the table. Anybody that tells you differently didn't read the decision, or they didn't understand it. Now, the next thing had to do with pressuring Pence to flip the electoral vote. When Donald Trump is talking to Vice President Mike Pence about the electoral process, that is a power that is granted to the President of the United States and the Vice President. However, because the Vice President is serving as the President of the Senate, there's some overlap there between the presidential powers and the congressional powers. But because there's overlap and it's still part of the President's powers, he's given presumptive immunity, meaning the assumption is going to be that he's probably immune unless the government can argue against his immunity in this case. However, that argument against it is a pretrial motion. It's not an affirmative defense that Trump has to use in court. It's something that the prosecution, in this case the state, has to overcome before you can even get to a trial process. It's part of your pretrial motions. So you can you can do a motion to dismiss based on immunity, and the government has to overcome that burden. Nobody knows how yet, because I don't think there was a way given to figure out how that works. So whether or not pressuring Pence counts as an official act or not, we do not know. Conversations with state officials to flip their electoral votes. The lower courts haven't done a fact pattern analysis yet, or fact analysis yet, or even given an argument for if that was official or unofficial. So the Supreme Court remanded that to the lower courts, and they said, figure out, go do the facts, and then come back to us, because the Supreme Court is a court of last review. It is not a court of first review. The Supreme Court will not consider novel facts in front of it. That has to be dealt with by the lower courts first. And then the speech made on January 6th to rally supporters was given the same treatment. There wasn't a fact analysis done on that to determine whether or not it was a core power of the president, like an official act, or if it was an unofficial act. So it was remanded to the lower courts for them to decide that. So two parts of that indictment were remanded to the lower courts for an analysis. A third thing was remanded to the lower courts basically for them to argue against the presumptive immunity. Why shouldn't Trump have immunity there? And the conversation between Trump and his acting attorney general is completely off the table. He's been granted absolute immunity for that. Can you further elaborate to viewers about the need to examine motive and how preventing us from examining motive makes this incredibly difficult? Not yet, because I don't think I've reached that part of the decision yet. I think we were a little bit over halfway done. I'm sure that that's probably brought up by the dissent, but we haven't read the dissent yet. What is the Trump defense about the fake electors? Did they just deny it? They just said they were legal. They don't even talk about it. Nobody even knows how. It's not a question of whether talking to Pence was an official act. It's a question of whether or not granting community would weaken the authorities or function of the executive. I think that the argument, I think that's dealt with in the ruling. I think they say that anything that is going to make a core power criminally indictable would weaken the authority or executive or function of the executive. That's why the exception they give is if Congress has an overlapping power. All of the core presidential powers that are exclusively granted to the president are beyond judicial review, beyond criminal review. That was the novel thing that we got from this Supreme Court case, that all core acts taken by the president as official acts that are part of the core power of the president are beyond criminal review. Nobody is allowed to review those acts in a criminal matter ever. Destiny's hatred for Trump stems from the rebellion against his mom. So pedantic. Okay. Sorry, hold on. I will call these out. Somebody in YouTube chat said judicial, but not congressional. Wrong. Congress can never, ever, ever make somebody criminally liable. Congress can only impeach somebody. Impeachment is a process to remove someone from office. Start and stop. That's it. That's all impeachment can do. Impeachment is not there to criminally prosecute somebody, although for confusing reasons, a lot of the language is the same, and they treat it like a trial, kind of. They use a lot of overlapping language. However, impeachment is only for removing somebody from office. It is not for holding somebody criminally liable. Somebody could impeach you for raping somebody, and you could be convicted in the Senate for rape, but it doesn't matter. There's no the only thing they can do is remove you from office and make it so you can't hold future office. Can you explain to me how separation of powers is related to this? Isn't the executive the branch that charges crimes? How is an executive charging the executive a separation of powers issue? Executives are tasked with carrying out the faithful execution of laws passed by the legislature, Congress, but the judicial branch is who makes people hold to account for their crimes. However, I don't think there's a separation of powers issue here, because I don't think it's a separation of powers. I don't believe that the criminal prosecution, I don't believe is a check on anything. I just don't think that, I don't think criminal charges or criminal conviction is thought of as a check on power of any of the branches of government. But my government history is not the best, so maybe, I don't know, maybe it was, even though there's absolutely no writing in any single part of the entire history, in any of the text or any of the history and any of the laws of the United States, because if it was, they would have referenced it at least one time, and they didn't. So there are no references like that, but yeah. Is this shit super complicated, or am I stupid? Everything in law is complicated when you only have one or two pieces. But in my opinion, this is how I felt reading U.S. law. This is how I felt reading international law. The legal system starts off like this. You look at it and you're like, I think it kind of makes sense. And then you dive into it a bit and you're like, this is convoluted and fucking weird as fuck. And then when you get into it more, usually everything makes a lot of sense. Things are set up the way they are for reasons where it's like, oh shit, this is actually, there's a really good argument. Fuck, reading those Federalist Papers yesterday was pretty base. These guys were really smart in their design of government. The United States is not a government that sprung up and happened or didn't evolve out of other systems. The United States was incredibly intentionally put together from start to finish using a historical and contemporary analysis that combined theory and empirical, evidence of how governments have functioned in order to put together a government that not only functioned well, but was adaptable and responsive and dynamic going forward. That's why the United States, I believe, has the oldest surviving constitution, full constitution, out of here with that Magna Carta bullshit, full constitution that is the bedrock of a government of any country on the planet today, even though it's a relatively new country. Most of the legal stuff that I've come across, most of it makes sense. Even stuff that I've historically said, God, like, why do we have like strict liability crimes? It's so stupid. Like, even stuff that I thought was generally dumb, like once I've gotten a different explanation for it, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I get that. I understand that now. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Generally how it goes. Yeah. Isn't the main distinction the Supreme Court made is between unofficial and official acts? Never in the history of the United States of America, I would argue, with limited historical understanding, but based on the arguments I've seen the Supreme Court put forth, on the little we've read of Thomas, who is going on a schizo ramble right now, and then what I read of the Roberts, who penned the majority opinion, I do not believe that any president in the United States has ever operated with the assumption that he was immune from criminal prosecution. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. That's why I don't think there is a worry that you can make that if you criminally indict a president, that it would lead to the destruction of the country. Because I think presidents have always operated like they were worried about potential criminal indictment. I think that's all. I don't think any president has ever acted or thought that he was above the law. I don't believe that. But I could be wrong.
College, you've been checked in, they're already here.
But these are the rest of the electors.
I understand. But the Capitol is closed. Everybody knows permitted.
Come forward.
Captain, the electors are also, the GOP electors are also on the governor's certificate of ascertainment.
I'm not going to get into a political debate. I'm following orders.
It's not a political debate. Okay. It's the official sealed document. The certificate of ascertainment has...
Official sealed document? He's lying. He doesn't have an official sealed document. He has a perjury. None of that is true. He is not duly elected. None of these people are. These are part of Trump's scheme to get a fake set of electors into the Capitol building. The reason why they wanted to go in the building is so that they weren't perjuring themselves as much and so they could cause more confusion, so that they could be more easily confused with the actual appointed electors.
Also, the GOP electors, they are here. They're trying to do their constitutional duty.
I understand.
And their constitutional duty requires them to be at the Senate chamber today at 2 p.m.
Okay.
They're here.
All right, they're not.
The core powers have always been thought to be non-regulatable by Congress. There is existing precedent for that already with respect to the firing of federal employees. I agree with you, and I think I would agree with that statement. I agree that core powers, constitutional powers granted to the president are so strong, in fact, that Congress can't even pass laws against those. I would agree with that. That is a good argument, but I don't think anybody's arguing against that. Why the fuck would the legislature have the ability to dictate to the executive things that are granted to it by the Constitution? The Constitution supersedes both of these bodies. However, two things. If Congress wants to change what the president does, that needs to be done through constitutional amendment. You have to change the actual Constitution. And the Constitution, remember, is the original Constitution plus all the amendments. That's constitutional law. All of that is. Okay? However, I don't think that criminal review of criminal actions that are taken by the president count as the legislature or the judicial reviewing executive actions. I believe that those are meaningfully different. So, for instance, if the president pardons somebody and Congress is like, actually, fuck you, we don't want that person pardoned. We think that guy's an asshole. You're not allowed to pardon that person. Fuck you. I think that rightfully in the first court, that would get struck down. You go, sorry, Congress, kick rocks, eat shit. You don't have the ability to limit the power of the president on that. You can't do that. That's his power that's granted by the Constitution. However, if the president goes on live TV and he says, here's my Bitcoin wallet. If I've got $20 million by the end of the day, I'll pardon, XYZ federal criminal. Let's see what happens. Then, he gets some money. Cool, I'm going to go pardon it. And a judge or a prosecutor says, excuse me, sir, you just took a bribe. You can't do that. I don't believe, as it's argued by Roberts, that counts as judicial review of a core power of the president. I don't believe that's to be the case. I think that he's committed a criminal act that is not a core power delegated to the president. A very plain reading of any part of the Constitution, of any of the Federalist Papers, of any part of the framers discussing our Constitution is never going to grant you this idea that the president can commit crimes with his core powers. Okay? So if you want to say that he's committed a crime, that's fine. Now, the argument that Roberts and the court is floating is that, well, if you can review these actions criminally, then essentially you basically are reviewing them like in practice, because now now Congress or the judicial can just charge him with a crime or not convict. Charge him with a crime. Basically, the judicial can charge him with a crime every single time they don't like what he does. However, if you want to say that, you can run with that argument, but man, that is a scathing indictment of our federal justice system. So you're saying that all criminal indictments are bullshit? You're saying the grand jury system is bullshit? You're saying that we can't rely on any part of our judicial system to deliver us like fair and decent indictments? Now, Roberts' counter argument to that is maybe they can. However, in the case of the presidency, the office of the presidency is so exceptional and so special that sure, the federal system will work fine for criminal indictments for an ordinary citizen, but for the president, who might be making historically unpopular decisions, do you really want a president who has to make a decision on whether or not he's going to keep this country safe to have to think whether or not he'll face criminal prosecution for it? The president has a unique role, and he's vested with unique and exclusive power in the Constitution. He's not above the law, but some things should be beyond review because we don't want him second guessing himself, because the judicial system can put unique pressure on him. Now, the counter, whatever the fuck argument to that I wish I would have seen addressed here is, okay, fine, that is true, that the president might have a unique set of circumstances that make it so that he might have a more difficult time in the criminal system. However, criminal crimes, not civil matters, but crimes are not just an interest between parties. Crimes are a state interest. The state, every individual and the state has an interest in not allowing crimes to happen. And I would argue that for the president, we have an extra special interest, not just in each individual state, but in the United States, in this country, to not have a president committing crimes. So while I agree that there might be undue burden or a potential undue burden on the president, there also should be a higher expectation that this is not a criminal in office. He's not a criminal president. That's also a very high burden. And what I don't like is that all of the citations that we've been given in Roberts' opinion, I'm reiterating this because I haven't got the next two, all of the citations that we've been given are to cases, especially that Fitzgerald case with Nixon, are to cases that talk about how, well, the president shouldn't be liable for court stuff. He shouldn't be liable for court stuff. He shouldn't be liable for court stuff. He should be liable for court what? For civil damages. For civil damages. And the argument that Roberts makes that, well, if he can't be held liable for civil stuff, obviously he can't be held liable for criminal stuff, right? Criminal's even worse than civil. Sure, but there's a much higher burden of proof on criminal stuff. It's not easy to say that one is categorically necessarily worse for the other, depending on your situation. Like I said before, if I was running a business and you were to tell me, okay, Destiny, you just got one wish from a genie lamp. Do you wish to be immune from all criminal prosecution, or do you wish to be immune from all civil litigation? I would say, make me immune from civil litigation. I'm not going to be committing crimes. I don't want to murder somebody. I'm not going to do something against the law. But you can make me immune from all civil litigation? I can't be held liable for any damages to any person ever? Bro, you can get sue people for that shit any day. Anybody can be a plaintiff in a civil case. That shit. Hell yeah. And you only need 51% to win those cases. So hell yeah, make me immune from civil litigation. Do I need to be immune from criminal matters? No, there's a much higher burden there. It's harder to get an indictment. It's much harder to get a conviction. Criminal stuff is separate. I don't like the conflation between the criminal and the civil stuff. But that's just my Uneducated opinion so far. Heelship Podcast, thank you for the 5 subs. Isn't this the first criminal case against a president ever? Yes, there's one argument that's commonly floated about that, but there is a counter argument that I've never heard floated. So one side of the aisle will say, this is the first criminal case ever, okay? Imagine how horrible it would be if everybody started doing criminal cases against presidents. That's one argument that you could float. However, I feel like I could just as easily give the counter, hold on, this might be the first president that's overtly committed criminal acts because presidents have operated under the assumption that if they do this, they will be held criminally liable. Imagine a future where presidents now think they can't be. Like, if you were to go back historically and poll the presidents, hey, just curious, if you committed a criminal act as part of, like, being the president, do you think you could be, like, charged with a crime in the United States? Most of them would probably say, in, like, most cases, yeah, probably. Maybe not, like, for actions taken as, like, commander-in-chief or, like, wartime stuff. Maybe there might be some exception. But for the most part, they'd probably say, like, yeah. Otherwise, my assumption would be, why the fuck would Nixon resign? Like, who cares? Make sure that the people you're ordering to around are just like people that are in the executive, and yeah, you're just having conversations with them about shit that they, you know, could be doing anyway, right? Well, I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know what the Watergate was. What was it? Just like putting cameras or stealing shit from like the offices of the political opponents? Just tell the FBI to do it. That's the FBI literally exists under you. It's an office authorized by Congress. You're allowed to fill it. You're allowed to staff it. You nominate the head. Like, just talk to the head of the FBI and say, go investigate that and go fuck them up. That's part of your core powers as president. You can't be held criminally liable for whatever you talk to the FBI about, and you're above criminal review. You're above criminal review there. Maybe somebody in the FBI, you know, gets fucked. Maybe you get impeached. You can't be fucking charged with a crime. I think Nixon, though, thought he could be charged with a crime because Ford pardoned him, which some would argue is an implicit admission of a crime. No, I've never settled that. I haven't read into that, but I admire how much of an institutional simp Destiny is. EMAD, if it wasn't for our institutions, you wouldn't fucking exist. The whole internet that you use, okay, has come from the institution of our defense industry, operating as a coherent entity and investing in new research and technologies. Literally no part of your life, okay, would exist right now without the institutions of this great country. Eat shit, okay? How is a crime committed by the president a state issue? This should exclusively be a federal issue. No, not necessarily. States have crimes. The federal government has crimes. People can commit crimes in different states. They can be held liable in different states for state crimes. Just depends on what you're doing. Do you think this will change the pool of future presidential candidates while they try to test the law? Maybe. Why wouldn't you? My understanding is that Donald Trump's attorneys are trying to do that now. I think they're trying to say that, I've only seen like things posted in chat, but I think they're trying to claim now that, oh, well, actually, hold on. These other things that we were charged with, these were official acts. The fake elector scheme, this is an official act. If his legal team is able to argue that any part of this elector scheme was an official act, not only is that beyond criminal review, it also can't be considered in any other part of the trial as well. So technically, for Donald Trump's legal team to beat the Jack Smith case, they don't even really have to beat every single thing. If they can just pick enough things out of it, you kind of lose the cohesive elements that you could even use to make the case against him. Like right now, none of the conversation, like in my opinion, the conversation between him and his attorney general, like not only, fuck me, I'm so irritated. I just realized this. Not only would that conversation be above judicial review, we wouldn't even know about it because the only reason we do know about that conversation is because of it being reviewed, essentially. That January 6th commission probably wouldn't have had the ability to do any sort of investigation there because all the subpoenas would die or wouldn't be authorized, and the indictment wouldn't have gone through on that particular thing because that was a core power. So we wouldn't even know about that conversation. Off topic, but I saw you say on Piers Morgan that the president gets to place people on the court. Do you not agree the Constitution says the president nominates and the Senate confirms? Why would I not agree when you've just restated part of my position? What did I say that makes you think I disagreed with that? And what do you think you're saying that is countering anything I've said? Can this decision be reversed or irrelevant in any way? A Supreme Court Supreme Court in the future could overturn this decision, or Congress could pass an amendment, a constitutional amendment changing it. Those are the only two ways. Can you give a Steelman for this decision? I really can't understand how even a partisan could claim, a partisan court could claim this is constitutional. Yeah, the Steelman, you should be able to Steelman. Listen, Supreme Court justices might make, in my opinion, wild fucking decisions, but they're always going to have some argumentation or backing. They publish so much shit. These guys write so much. They love writing. They're writing files. Basically, the Steelman argument is when the United States of America's government was conceived of, we were given a legislature. I'm borrowing a lot from, I think, Federalist Paper 69 and 70 here. The legislature was created. The legislature is supposed to be slow and bogged down, and there is supposed to be multiple people on it that disagree with each other. And that disagreement is good, okay? There is a goodness to the fighting on the legislature. You want these guys disagreeing with each other. You want these guys debating each other. You want these guys to have these huge arguments over what legislation should look like. You want it to be slow, okay? You want that to happen because that's a good legislature. They should be debating in that tension, something great is created, which is hopefully legislation that represents, the legislature, which is elected by the people, as best as possible. However, now that the law is passed, when the law is given to the executive, there is a reason why in the United States of America we have one man, one unitary executive who is entrusted with that power. And that's because when it comes to the execution of law, you don't want there to be multiple people with co-equal power. You want there to be one man or woman that says, this is the law, this is how it's going to be done. Boom, that's it. Having a disagreement on the executive level, having a disagreement with your magistrate, is what they would have called it back then, having a disagreement with people that are supposed to execute the law makes you look weak, makes you look feeble. It makes you look like you don't know what the is going on. It arouses doubt in the minds of your constituents. It's a horrible deal. So you want the executive, a quote used often by Roberts, the framers envisioned an energetic and vigorous executive. When you make the executive's actions, especially core actions that only he himself as the president can take, when you make those actions reviewable by a criminal court, what you essentially tell the president is, listen, when you're making decisions on how best to execute your function as the president of the United States, when you make that decision, you should be thinking about what is the best way to execute the law for the best outcome for your country. You don't want them thinking, well, but if I do it this way, somebody might come at me with a crime. You never want the president to be thinking, not in the best interest of the country, but in his own personal best interest to avoid criminal charges. Maybe there's a hard decision that needs to be taken that might result in something that an ordinary person would be charged with a crime for, but the president thinks that it's the best way to faithfully execute the laws passed by Congress, or he thinks it's in the best interest of his exclusive role in something in the president for the execution of his role. You don't want him to be second-guessing himself and for him to be making decisions for his own personal safety because of criminal liability. So that's why the Supreme Court has argued when the president is acting in an official act, especially as part of those core powers, it should be beyond all judicial review, criminal review. That's like the Roberts Steelman. Do you think that Shapiro would still argue that the guardrails are stronger than Trump? Opinion now that GOP policy is actively removing the initial argument that he made was dumb. I don't know. Can you come up with an example of that? Not saying there isn't. It's just hard to conceptualize. I don't know. Not really, no. And they don't really give any examples either. Maybe they come in more in concurrent opinions. Who will decide the result? Is it a judge or jury? Is it possible that in defiance, a judge would say it was a crime knowing the gravity? No, you can't. The Supreme Court says no. The Supreme Court is the final matter. Yeah. Can you provide me an example of a federal law that a president could be worried about breaking in their job as president? No, I can't. In a criminal way? Not really. No, I have a hard time envisioning that. I'm not sure. But I don't know. Maybe one will come up. Maybe I'll think about it more. That's why I don't know. I don't like it for a variety of reasons. But yeah, is there even evidence for elections being stolen or numbers being tampered with? Nothing that would be election determinative or outcome determinative in any state or district, I think, yeah. Do you think the fear was that due to separation of powers precedent, the Supreme Court didn't want to delegitimize the executive branch? I don't know. I feel like all I've heard over and over and over again is that the executive branch has way too much power. But if Biden loses, can he just use this ruling to reelect himself using Trump's tactics? Seems like it. I don't know how you would get away from that. Joe Biden says that he thinks Joe Biden goes to have a conversation with the CIA director. He goes to talk to Burns, and in that conversation, he tells Burns, listen, I think Trump is a threat to the U.S., or maybe not, I don't know, I just don't like him. We need to take him out. We need to assassinate him. So get some dudes, go get him. I don't know if he's at Mar-a-Lago or whatever, and report back, let me know. That happens, Trump is assassinated, Biden's chilling at the White House, and the country is looking, and now every single Republican is obviously screeching and pissing and shitting and coming and diarrheaing, and their eyeballs are leaking out of their heads, all screaming on Twitter, what's going on? But then the Democrats calmly respond and they say, hey, if you don't like the fact that you think that Biden just assassinated your candidate, impeach him. That's literally all you can do. Impeach him and eat shit. Because you said that when the president of the United States is speaking with, the head of the CIA, that is exclusively within a core power of the president. You don't want to judicially review that action. That would be crazy. You don't want a president to have to worry about, serving in one of the most important roles, managing the protection and the defense of this country. Now, did Biden just order an assassination? I don't know. We can't review it judicially. That is a core and exclusive power. That's not given. Also, get familiar with these terms. Presumptive immunity is not granted there. Presumptive immunity happens when the presidential power has an overlap with the congressional power. A core exclusive presidential power is not given presumptive immunity. It's given absolute immunity. It's immune from subpoena, and it's immune from judicial review, meaning it can never be charged with a crime, and nothing about it can ever be used in any legal case ever. So if you don't like the fact that Biden ordered the assassination of Donald Trump while engaging in his core act as a president, then impeach him. That's it. And if he does it on the last day in office and you can't impeach him, then I don't know. That's it. That's the part that's so confusing me. Why would conservatives be excited about this? The same group that supposedly rigged the election is now essentially free to do whatever they want, and they're celebrating because they just assume Trump will win. That's a really good question. There are multiple ways to come at that. One is that most of them are just probably too retarded to know what this will result in or could result in. Two is that most of them are short-sighted and they just see this as being able to exonerate Trump from his court cases, because I personally think that it's likely that the Mar-a-Lago case and the Jack Smith case will probably be completely tossed. I think Trump is now saved from both of those cases. I don't know about the Georgia one. I don't know how this is going to engage with state the state investigation. I don't know how that works. So they're short-sighted and they see it as being good because it exonerates Trump from his court cases. And then, and they just don't think Biden will do anything with it. I don't know. Yeah. They assume Trump will win and the Democrats will not abuse their power. Yeah, basically, yeah. How do you think Senate Republicans will respond, considering many voted against impeachment because they believe Trump could be held criminally responsible after leaving office? Bullshit. Don't ever believe anything Republicans say. Republicans have no fucking spine at all. Okay? Republicans are spineless losers. Republicans, they're not even the SPD or whatever the Social Democrats or whatever. I don't even know who. They would just be the Nazi Party. Not to do the Voshian comparison. God, I wish I knew more. I wish I knew more about how this act came to be. But the Republicans will sit by and championing this as it happens the whole time. That's it. That's all they've done the whole time. They haven't stood in opposition to literally any of this. For me to truly understand the Enabling Act, I feel like I would need a better grasp on the core of German law. When people typically say the government, when they're talking about law, the government is separated from the parliament, right? The government is the president and all that shit, and then the parliament is the other thing, I think. So what the Enabling Act did for Hitler was the Enabling Act gave Hitler the ability to pass laws, basically, which our executive doesn't have, and this ruling doesn't give him any de jure meaning like as written ability to do that. Does it give him the ability de facto to change the way that he functions? Maybe. Arguably. Do you honestly think that this could reach Nazi Germany levels just based on the last Supreme Court decision? No, I don't think that it's never just one thing. It probably wasn't the case in Germany. It's probably not the case in any fascist. There's never just one thing that does it. Destiny, it doesn't empower him really. It just means he can't be charged, but his actions can still be checked. You're completely and totally fucking incorrect. The whole point of this ruling was that some actions have no checks. You're dead wrong. Damn, I got his attention for a second, but I typed my follow-up too slow. I may never know why Destiny consistently implies the Senate does not have the right to vote against a Supreme Court nomination. Oh, Holy 1T03. My bad. I didn't realize, or I forget sometimes, that I'm speaking to conservatives who are fucking retarded and don't know any of the history, any of the processes, or literally anything that they talk about. The issue with McConnell and his Senate and the lack of confirmation of Garland was not that the Senate voted him down, okay? That's not what happened. That wasn't the issue, all right? Go look it up. Go look up the process, do some reading, and educate yourself. That's not what the issue was, and that's not what happened. I don't think they can toss the Mar-a-Lago documents case because the document obstruction crimes were done after he was president. No. Well, the question would be if any of the initial stuff was even legally obtained. The thing is, the question is remember, the court defended the outer perimeter of what the president might consider like an official act. They defended the outer perimeter of what that could be, okay? So anything that could conceivably be an official act. So it is possible that him taking those documents, that him initially doing that maybe could conceivably be an official act. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on how far we run with the thing is, like, everything is going to be argued from that for Trump's lawyers. They're gonna argue every single one of those things was an official act, and that he, at the very least, if not given absolute immunity, at the very least he's given presumptive immunity, and that needs to be overcome now in pretrial before. That needs to be declared. But I don't know. You would think that obstruction of justice after the fact probably shouldn't be, but who knows? We'll see. All these provisions you're citing, they're pretty similar to what was recently used during COVID in many European countries where executive bodies of state, government, or president could make some emergency decrees without consensus with the parliament. I don't know these things, but you're 99% you're wrong. I seriously doubt it. I'm pretty sure most countries, the United States included, gives executors of power pretty broad deference during times of like national emergency. But the idea that like, oh, well, during COVID, the president could have come to all of our houses and made all of us take our pants off and touch our butts in front of him and then recorded it and blah, like, off. I hear that bullshit. Just to be perfectly clear, you guys all said that was going to be the new normal indefinitely going forward, and that our whole future was destroyed and doomed because every fucking power that had been granted was infinitely going to be abused in the future, blah, blah, blah. No, fuck you. Okay. Is there anything Americans can actually do about this ruling? Probably not. I mean, you keep voting for Democrats and hopefully don't have more Supreme Court justices that are conservative. What do you think about this flow chart with regards to the case? I need to go back to reading this. Pathways for prosecution after the Supreme Court. Types of conduct. You have official acts. Is it conclusive and preclusive? Core constitutional authority. So conclusive means I think it's definitely done by the president, and it needs to be done by the president to run the country. And then preclusive means that only the president can do it and nobody else can. If the answer is yes, then you get absolute immunity for these actions, meaning no part of it can be questioned. No prosecution, no use as evidence, and you can't probe into it or do anything, right? Yeah. And the example given in the Supreme Court case was the pressure on... Oh, actually, that's just an example they're given, but them talking to the AG would have been, yeah. If it's a conclusive plus preclusive, core constitutional, if it's not, let's say there's overlap with Congress, does it pose any dangers of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch? If the answer is yes, then you can't do anything. Boom. And then no, then maybe, yeah, then you can go down there, yeah. And then if it's unofficial conduct, then you can treat it as ordinary. But I don't know what's ever going to include unofficial conduct when you're the president of the United States, because almost everything can be argued to be official conduct. Will you react to Ben Shapiro on the ruling? Did he give a reaction to it? Please explain the difference between absolute versus presumptive immunity. I'm begging you, I don't get it. Okay, sure. Okay, limited understanding of the court system, so beware. Okay, in the United States of America, okay, you have a trial, okay? In order for there to be a trial, okay, a couple things have to happen first, okay? First, we're talking criminal trial, okay? First, there needs to be probable cause, and then from probable cause, we can get criminal charges, okay? So probable cause gets us criminal charges or an indictment, okay? And then one of these things is applied to a citizen who now is facing, charges or an indictment, okay? Now, before a trial date is set, okay, you've got pre-trial, where the defendant or the DA, I think, can file motions that can do a variety of things before the actual trial happens, okay? Now, there's a whole bunch of pretrial motions that I don't know about, okay? But you might file pretrial motions. I think a common one might be like a motion to dismiss. So you might file a motion to dismiss. You might say, hey, let's say, for instance, let's say that you've been indicted for a crime. And let's say that the indictment file says, yesterday we saw Stephen Bonnell and he was walking down the street and he looked at a woman. And when he looked at that woman felt, she felt like he sexually assaulted her with his look, okay? Now he's being criminally charged, okay? I would tell, my attorney would say, okay, well, hold on. My attorney's going to file a pretrial motion to dismiss, and he's going to say, hey, look at the criminal statute and look at what's laid out in the indictment. You would say, I think, prima facie, there's not actually a criminal case here. Even if the indictment is true, what's being alleged isn't even criminal conduct. My motion is that we should dismiss this case. Here you go. Now, I don't know if a judge can look at that and make a determination without the other side giving a counter motion, or if a motion just goes right to a judge. I think the motion is just gone to the judge, and then the motion is considered by the judge. I don't think it has to be considered by the side. The judge might be able to solicit information from the prosecutor. You've also got, like, both sides can be filing motions. There are cross motion filings where they file at each other, but you have all this stuff pre-trial, okay, where people are kind of like hammering out, like, okay, well, what exactly is it about? Can I dismiss this through some way? Do we add charge? Whatever. All this is pre-trial. Once all this happens, then the actual trial happens, okay? Assuming you get convicted, and then from there you get sentenced, okay? All right. What absolute immunity means that, let's say that I'm the executive of the United States and the Constitution says Stephen Bonnell, through exclusive power granted to the president, shall have the ability to look at any woman that he wants. That means that if I do anything within the purview of looking at a woman, even if I look at a woman and then I order somebody to murder her, okay? Let's say I'm looking at her, I say, God, somebody needs to kill her, okay? Let's do it, whatever. But I'm exercising that power of looking at the woman, okay? Because I'm exercising that core power, and that power is conclusive and preclusive. Because I have absolute immunity there, it is unquestionable, and you can't even bring charges against me. You can't even investigate that. You have no right to probe or do anything relating to that power, okay? You have to fuck completely off. It's beyond judicial review. Presumptive immunity means that in this court case, now I think this is a new legal thing that's basically been constructed in this court case. I don't think presumptive immunity is a thing that's ever shown up before, but presumptive immunity means that, let's say that I'm looking at this woman and but let's say that Congress also has the ability to look at women. If you're a sitting congressman, you can also look at women, okay? Oh, cool, we've got the power too, okay? Let's say that as I'm looking at this woman, I look at her, I'm like, I'm gonna order a hit. This bitch, all right? Yeah, f her, okay? Because other people can do it. It's not exclusive and preclusive to me, okay? Somebody might look at that and they might go, okay, well, hold on. It is a power still to the president, so we're gonna presume that he's immune here. But if the state can argue that he wasn't acting in an official act, or if he was, that action, if that action wasn't, like if probing this action wouldn't destroy the ability of the executive to do his job, if you can beat that argument in pre-trial, then and only then can we proceed to any sort of actual hearing, okay? So all of the presumptive immunity stuff, all of this is happening pre-trial. It's happening before anything actually goes to court, okay? This is presumptive immunity. You're presumed to be immune unless the prosecutor, in this case the state or the federal government, can put forth an argument for why you shouldn't have this particular immunity. Now, how you make that argument, I don't think the court has given any guidance on that. That's going to be for the lower courts to try to figure out. But so literally this, he can do this.
The people, my people are so smart. And you know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible. No, they say, Trump, we love you too, man. Trump's voters are by far, I'm at 6.
Well, so this is the issue, is you don't know. The problem is, let's say Donald Trump is like, Donald Trump is walking down the street and he's like, well, I'm the commander in chief. I think that's an enemy, that's a militant, and I need to shoot him. I need to protect our country. Okay, well, he's the commander in chief of the military. It's a core function of the president, arguably one of the most important executive functions of the president. Should a court be allowed to review that decision? I don't know. Okay, let's read. So Thomas decides, I don't know why, but he's decided that he wants to say that there should never, ever, ever be a special counsel. That apparently there should never be special counsels, and they all need to go because they're not constitutional. I don't know why. I have no idea why that's taken up here, or why Thomas decided to opine on this in this ruling. I don't know, but he's decided to write his manifesto here on it. Thomas regularly uses his concurrences on things he hates. Bayzed. I keep coming back to the fact that the court gives no test for overcoming presumptive immunity. In Nixon v. Fitzgerald, it was a balancing act, public interest versus intrusion into the executive.
I understand they're not being permitted in.
Biden should just order all lower courts to ignore the Supreme Court's rulings. He could do that as an official act, no? No. Trump, no. The courts don't exist. Biden has nothing to do with the courts. The courts exist under the judicial. The only power that the president has for the courts is appointment. He can appoint judges, but he can't tell them how to judge. That's part of the judicial.
The problem, you can contact the governor's office, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, or...
Now, could the President of the United States talk to the Attorney General and tell the AG, hey, tell all the judges don't enforce this? Sure, that's a core power of the President of the United States, and he should be granted absolute... In fact, he's already been granted absolute authority with essentially every single conceivable question, or every single conceivable thing he could have a discussion with his Attorney General with about the operation of that branch.
The government press release this morning that said due to COVID, is that the reason being given?
No.
All right, that was what the press release said. Is there another reason why?
You'd have to ask the governor's office to answer that question. I don't have.
We have a copy of paperwork that was prepared as electors under their constitutional duty. Can I speak to the Sergeant of Arms of the Senate to deliver it to the chamber today?
He's in a meeting right now with the Electoral College. He's not available to meet.
Captain Green, is it Captain?
First Lieutenant Green.
First Lieutenant, can you deliver this?
I cannot.
Okay. Is there anyone here?
Did the authentic electors / state government know what they were trying to do? I don't know if they knew of this in advance. I'm not sure.
That's willing to allow us.
Well, actually, we just watched. I think what's the name of the lady? Maddow, I think on MSNBC. I guess in her program, I was only reading the titles and listening a little bit. It sounded like she was trying to make the argument that some of the paperwork that these fake electors had looked like it was copied from the paperwork from the official delegates. So it seems like somebody on the inside might have been working with them. Maybe. Now, that sounded like that was all the evidence. I don't know if they had more than that, but...
Elected officials and electors to deliver this to the Senate today.
The DOJ does not employ judges. They are a separate branch. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, that's true. The federal government can only appoint judges. Even the attorney general, nobody gives instruction to the judiciary. That's true. I'm sorry, that was completely wrong. No part of the. I'm sorry. There's an easy test for that too. If you understand how government functions, if the president doesn't have control over something, then nobody beneath the president has control over something, because the president is the executive branch, and everything that exists underneath the president only exists at the essentially to help the president do his job. That's it. In an ideal world, the president would be a super machine that doesn't need any of these lower things. So if the president can't do it, then nobody beneath him can do it, because they all exist underneath him.
Today at 2 p.m.
Okay, I can ask the Senate Majority Leader, the House Majority Leader, and
Senator Mike Shirkey, would you deliver that to him? Tell him Ian Norton.
You can contact his office directly and make arrangements to drop that off to him, sir. I'm not going to take anything.
You're not letting him in the building. His office is inside.
He's not here.
What's that?
He's not here.
So are you telling me that the Senate chamber is in session and the Senate leader's not here?
Yeah. So you'd have to contact his office and make arrangements to meet with him to turn over.
Somebody from the governor's team that's running this.
You'd have to contact the governor's office with their team to make arrangements for them.
Is the president a cop? I believe that the president would have. Wait, that's actually a really interesting question. Hold on. Can the president of the United States arrest someone for a federal crime? Could he theoretically? He must be able to, right? Politics stack exchange. Can the president personally arrest someone? If all executive powers held by the president can arrest, doesn't that mean the president can too? Everyone can make an arrest, but I suppose you're not asking about that, are you? No. In the UK, any citizen can perform an arrest, however, in the case of citizen, no one cares. Any individual in the U.S. No, cringe. The power to make an arrest is vested in certain official positions. These positions are established by federal, state, or local statute, i.e. by Congress, state legislatures, or local committees. An individual is supposed to grant the power when they take these offices for the term they hold such offices. Under normal institutional constraint, that's not I don't know if that's a legal question. Man, I'm so confused, or I'm so curious about this. Can the president personally arrest someone? Reddit. So in any office that exists under the president has to be created by Congress. It might be the case that if the president is authorized by Congress to create an office to enforce a law, I don't know if that means that he personally can enforce it. I'm not sure. A scene in the TV show Designated Survivor shows the president arresting a state governor for treason. What?
James Royce, I am placing you under arrest for treason against the United States of America. Marshals.
Could he do that? Could he arrest him himself? Well, now, with Kiefer Sutherland as the source, it seems like maybe the president can. Powers of Federal Bureau of Investigation. The director, associate director, assistant to the director, assistant director, inspectors, and agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation of the Department of Justice may carry firearms, serve warrants and subpoenas issued under the authority of the United States, and make arrests without warrant for any offense against the United States committed in their presence, or for any felony cognizable under the laws of the United States, if they have reasonable grounds to believe that the person to be arrested is committed or is committing such felony. Okay. Can Congress grant powers to a federal office but not the president? Could you do that? There's no way that's possible, right? Because couldn't you theoretically, no, hold on, this can't be possible. Because couldn't you theoretically have Congress create like a mini executive who's stronger than the president, like, and start granting him a bunch of powers that the president doesn't have? This is probably in the actual Constitution itself, huh? Off topic, but is it true that black guys on average have bigger ding-dongs, or is that just a myth? My personal opinion is I think all penis length research is like highly not reliable. I've seen so many fucking random like things on average sizes between, like, there are some, what was that one study that was saying like the average size of some African countries like 9 inches long? No shot. I don't know. I don't know if I trust any of that research.
Have conceded here the last time that you and I spoke in April, and John Sauer, who was arguing this before the Supreme Court, that some of what's alleged would be considered a private act. So that would mean that at least part of this case from Jack Smith would go to court based on what you have said before, right?
We've admitted consistently that there are acts alleged in the indictment that would constitute private conduct, but we believe that if the official conduct, the immune acts in the indictment are stripped away, that Jack Smith doesn't have a case, that this case should be dismissed on that basis.
Possibly, that might be true.
I don't think there's sufficient private conduct here to support the indictment, to support the ongoing prosecution. And that's what we're going to be litigating in front of the district court now.
Even just the false slates of electors, you don't think that would constitute enough for a trial?
Well, we would say alternate slates of electors. And as we argued before the Supreme Court, alternate slates of electors have been a method used by previous presidents, most notably Ulysses S. Grant, to ensure the integrity of prior elections. So we believe the assembly of those alternate slates of electors was an official act of the presidency. That's what we argued before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has reserved that issue for determination by the district court, and we'll see how arguments fall in front of the district court.
Yeah, we've walked through those historical references here before. None of them compare to what we saw in 2020 with the fake slates of electors. But Will Scharf, great to have your reaction to this. Thank you for joining us tonight.
I would disagree with that, Caitlin, but great to be with you. Thank you.
He would be factually incorrect, but how could you possibly argue for that? You can't. You're relying on the other person to not have an understanding of what those prior electoral acts, of what those prior electoral slates were authorized for. Glenn Greenwald tried that when we debated. He tried to float that. Well, they've done this before, but then as soon as I pushed on it, hold on, why did they do that in Hawaii? He was like, okay, yeah, well, it was a close election, and the state actually authorized it. It wasn't just a secret private group of electors. The state authorized it because they were doing a recount, and the recount was incredibly close, so that way they would authorize either set depending on who won. It's a totally different circumstance. It's actual bullshit. Yeah, the only way that argument works is if the other person is just not familiar with the history.
Independence, more powerful. Right, but again, so that plays into the idea that anybody but Trump. And what I'm saying is that I would rather have Trump be president for 4 years and build a real left-wing movement that can get us what we deserve as a people than to let Hillary be president and we stay locked in the same space.
Yeah, where is that left-wing movement at right now, by the way? Where are they at?
Would rather not have Donald Trump be president at all, period.
man.
I just felt
Independence.
How many years ago was this? He said this 4 years ago, didn't he? Or 8 years ago? This you. No, I didn't say I'd rather Trump be president. That's a ridiculous misrepresentation of what I said. You're excluding the fact that I also said that we should do everything we can to keep Trump out of the White House. You're also ignoring the fact now that my concern about... no, I didn't. I'd rather Trump be president. You literally said it, and it's on video too.
And again, the electors by statute, it's statute MCL 168.47, have to be at the Senate chamber 2 days.
Okay.
At 2 p.m. They're trying.
I'm telling you that they're not going to be allowed to enter the Capitol, sir.
All right, thank you, Lieutenant.
You're welcome. Thank you.
What was your hope and plan today by coming here?
The electors can speak for themselves, but the hope and plan is for them to follow their constitutional duty. Under the U.S. Constitution, not just the Michigan Constitution, but under the U.S. Constitution, the electors have a duty to vote for their chosen candidate. In this case, the GOP electors slate their chosen candidate, President Trump. The Democrat electors are inside, I'm told, slating their chosen candidate, Joseph Biden. There's actually Green Party and Libertarian Party electors selected before the election as well. So the statute says it has to be done at 2 p.m. That's why they're here trying to do it. That paperwork is signed, it's sealed, and it's trying to be delivered. Stevie Wonder and Motown, I think, said that a little better than I did. But the point is that's not being happened. They're being stopped from fulfilling their constitutional duty. Now, I would call upon the Michigan legislature in the People's House. This is the legislature building in the People's House to finish their investigation so that we know which set of electors should ultimately be chosen before...
Did any of these fake electors get in legal trouble for this? I think in most of the states, yes. Most of these people are now being prosecuted for, I would imagine, for perjury. I don't know what else. Can you make sense of what he said? He's citing the laws correctly. He's just lying about them being the slate of electors. The slate of electors are supposed to meet. They're supposed to transmit their votes to Congress and to NARA, but these guys are not them. These guys are just private citizens that are falsely perjuring. They're alleging that they are the electors, but they're not. They're just lying under direction from Donald Trump.
A rash decision is made, especially while that investigation is ongoing, especially why a judge up in Antrim County, Judge Elsenheimer,
Abba said, at the time, nobody knew how bad Trump would be. Not the craziest thing to say. If he feels differently now, perfectly justified. No, it's not perfectly justified. He is, how old is he? 45 years old. He knows how the Supreme Court works. The strongest argument in favor of Hillary Clinton was always the Supreme Court. Everybody knew it at all points in time. And arguably the most destruction that Trump has caused has been to the Supreme Court, to where Roe v. Wade went, and Chevron, a lot of people have been talking about, and now this decision. So no, nothing has changed significantly. Everybody knew, no matter how bad Trump would be, that he would nominate very conservative justices. That was always known.
issued just this morning released a previously sealed or previously proprietary report, a forensic report that shows the voting machines used in Antrim County and in several other important counties throughout the state showed an error rate above 60% on the tabulation of the counting of votes. Under Michigan law and under federal law, under the Help America's Vote Act, that error rate is supposed to be less than 0.2%. But in Antrim County, based on those machines, the error rate was over 60%. And it would kick it into a adjudication by software, by code. It would kick it into an adjudication where the error rate was over 80%. That affected the race up in Antrim County. It was called user error and human error. That wasn't the case at all. That report released this morning over.
Would you say there wasn't ever liberal hysteria and they were 100% right about Trump in every way? The problem is that the challenge when dealing with Trump, there's multiple challenges at play here. One is that conservatives have completely flown off from reality. So the conservatives are a huge part. The second problem are uninformed people in the middle that just don't know any better. And then they always accuse the left of overreacting. And the third part was legitimately Trump was way worse than anybody thought any reasonable person thought he would be. Maybe. I consider myself a reasonable person. I thought that Trump getting elected would be pretty bad. But then I also thought that, like, it's probably just going to be business as usual. Like, whatever. It's bad, like, it happens. Bad presidents come and go, whatever the fuck. I don't think any, like, intelligent person actually thought that he would be this unhinged. But then a fourth issue is that Donald Trump does so many unhinged things that it's hard to make him account for those things, because when you start to call out too many, all of the Trump fans just go, Trump derangement syndrome, Trump derangement syndrome, Trump derangement syndrome. Uninformed people in the middle will look at it and go, yeah, true, these guys are being deranged. Like, you guys are being way too harsh on Trump. You guys are being not fair. And so when you're on the sidelines, you're kind of stuck in this weird world. It's like, okay, well, I can't criticize Donald Trump for everything he does because that makes me seem unhinged. Meanwhile, conservatives run pieces about Obama preferring Dijon mustard to ordinary mustard or wearing tan suits. Okay, well, we have to be careful about criminal investigations into Donald Trump stuff, even though the Republicans have been obsessing about Hillary's emails for years. Okay. We can't focus. We just have to, I guess, completely drop the idea that Donald Trump won't publish his taxes, won't divest from his businesses, is a billionaire with assets all over the world, and is also president of the United States making decisions. But we have to talk about Hunter Biden being on the board of Burisma, I guess. Like, the problem is that, like, if you're in a Democrat world, the Republicans have such an unbelievably low standard of what they tolerate and as soon as you try to hold them to account for anything, they try to play by your rules. They try to play with the Democratic rules. They're like, well, hold on. I thought that we weren't supposed to criticize for that. So, yeah. So there's two huge sets of rules. And Ben Shapiro admitted it when he debated me. There's two different sets of rules. When the Democrats are defending their people and when they are attacking the Republicans, they have to play by the Democrat rules. When the Republicans are defending their guy or attacking Democrats, they get to play by the Republican rules. So you end up, it's an unwinnable world. You can't win in that world because what's greenlit for Republican conduct is so unbelievably wide, and what's available for criticism is so narrow that it's an unwinnable. Yeah. What's the solution then? I don't know. We're get rid of the internet. I think the internet is kind of a lot of us, but I guess you just keep making. I mean, like, technically Democrats are doing better and better. We just don't see it as much because the institutional power, or I shouldn't say the structural power, for as much as conservatives hate institutions, the structural power of the government broadly supports Republican legislative and presidential power, because the Senate gives undue weight to red voters. The House gives undue weight to red voters. and the Electoral College gives undue weight to red voters. And now the Supreme Court favors red voters. So technically, because the Republicans benefit so much from their structural power, it's hard to see when Democrats are making gains. But I mean, like, even if you consider, like, people, you know, screech and moan about, like, oh, Hillary Clinton got destroyed by Donald Trump. Well, no, she didn't. Hillary Clinton annihilated Donald. In fact, I don't think I've heard her stand on this, but it wouldn't surprise me if Hillary had, no, that can't be true. Never mind. No, that wouldn't be true. Popular vote between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump there's a huge gulf between this. 3 million votes. So over a 2-point difference in votes for Hillary versus Trump. But again, because of the structure of how the United States government works, Donald Trump won by almost 80 electoral votes. So it's hard to see if Democrats are gaining because of the structural power that Republicans have. Wait, why the House isn't it proportional? The House tries to be proportional, but it still favors small states pretty significantly. Even the House is. One thing that I would support immediately is I think the House of Representatives should be expanded. Absolutely. The House of Representatives should be way more representative of people rather than land, because that's what the Senate is for. There's no excuse for the House to not accurately resemble the constituents of the United States. Hillary was so unlikable, though, no one trusted her. Apparently 3 million more Americans trusted Hillary than Donald Trump, but how does the House favor small states? Because it's not directly proportional. Like, I don't know what the exact numbers are. I'm sure you look them up, but it would be like this. Let's say that you have a state with 1 million voters, and let's say that you have a state with 10 million voters. The way that it works right now in the House of Representatives is it would be like, oh, the 10 million voter state, that state has 10 representatives. The 1 million voter state, they only have 3 representatives, right? So conservatives in chat, I'm sure they've been saying this when I've been reading these two. Conservatives might say some shit like, oh no, actually larger states have more representation in the House. No, not really. Like, the state kind of does a little bit, but like per voter, you still have less representation, even in the House of Representatives. And I don't think it should be that way. The Senate already has 2 votes per state. There's no reason to favor land in the House as well. This should be rebalanced. Even in the House of Representatives, the smaller states are disproportionately represented.
The objections of the Attorney General's office and over the objections of the Secretary of State's office, they tried to prevent that report from being released. They tried to keep that concealed from the people of Michigan.
You're thinking of Electoral College. Wyoming only gets 1 House vote. Crestintian come, please, come. Crestintian, as an attorney, watching Destiny go through these Supreme Court cases and legal issues makes me doubt his research in other areas. Please come to the disagreement room. Nothing makes me happier. Attorneys are the highest level of hubris to level of education, okay? You have one of the most dipshittably attainable master's degrees. All you have to do is read and pass a test, okay? Like 80% of people pass anyways, all right? Nobody gives a and then you go and you practice, and then you forget literally every thing you've learned in school anyways, and most of you suck shit at your jobs regardless, okay? Come in and chat. Come in and argue if you want. If you think that any of my analysis has been incorrect, feel free to jump into the Stream Disagreements channel on Discord. Go for it, please. Yes. Nothing makes me feel smarter than chewing up, okay, the worst type of grad student. Please, come in and chat. How do we know that Republicans are the crazy ones and not us? They seem to have the exact same condition. We just look at the facts. I don't know. Give me one to argue with, and I'll show you. The U.S. population keeps growing, but the House of Representatives is the same size as in the Taft era. Wide range of representation ratios across the state. So these are the number of people represented by one lawmaker. So if you go to smaller states here, you'll see the number of people represented by one lawmaker is 600 to 700,000. If you go to an ordinary state, it's 700 to 800,000. And then for some states, I guess you got super fucked. And you've got like 800 to 900,000 people represented by one lawmaker. Wait, so you brought up Wyoming was your example. How many representatives does Wyoming have? 7 states have 1 representative: Alaska, Wyoming, Montana. Oh, sorry, you said 1. So Wyoming population is 581,000. California has 52 representatives. California population. So 339, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, divided by 52. So if you're in California, you get 750,000 people get 1 representative. In Wyoming, it only takes 580,000 people to get 1 representative. This is what I mean when I say the House isn't balanced either. In a perfectly balanced House, California would have more representatives, right? Is it true that undocumenteds are considered part of the population for House rep calculations? I believe that is true, but because of the way the House is balanced right now, the last poll that I think it was a Gallup or Pew, I think that conservatives are the ones that benefit from that undocumented population by 1 vote right now, I think. Pew, let me check on that. Pew Research, census, illegal immigrant House seats. Was it just for Electoral College seats, or was it House of Representative seats? I don't remember. Oh, it might be this. What did I see here? How removing unauthorized immigrants from the census statistics could affect the House reapportionment. So if you were to reapportion the House and you were to get rid of illegal immigrants, Texas and Florida would both lose 1 seat. Alabama, Minnesota, and Ohio would gain 1 seat, and California would lose 1 seat. Conservatives will screech about how illegal immigrants are helping give Democrats votes, but it's not true. It doesn't, yeah. I think we should get rid of winner-take-all electoral points for presidential elections. Me too. I think it's real dumb, but 30 seconds left on this yapper.
They tried to keep that concealed from the people of Michigan.
Can we get your name?
My name is Ian Northon.
Can you spell that?
IANNORTHON. I'm a private attorney. I'm representing a charity called the Amistad Project. It's a 501c3, and it's affiliated with another charity called the Thomas More Society out of Chicago. We filed several pre-election lawsuits on election integrity. Every elected official, including the legislators and including everyone else here, the governor and everyone else, has a constitutional duty to ensure the accuracy and integrity of the election. And that's what these electors were trying to do here today.
Just want to let you know, the judge in the New York hush money case, he has postponed sentencing until September because of the Supreme Court's decision. So yeah, it may affect it.
Why? This shouldn't affect him because these were actions taken before being president, right?
Well, I think the hush money payments occurred after, like the actual transactions themselves, if I remember correctly, they took place after he was elected.
So in the case where Donald Trump is so late in paying any of his bills, might have actually paid off for him.
Right. So I sent you the link, the official ruling from Judge Merchan, and you can check it out when you've got time.
Have you watched Ben Shapiro's video on this yet? I feel like I'm going to watch it. I'm going to lose my fucking mind. It's an hour long. Somebody linked it to me. I might, if I have time before then I show it, and I'll watch it, but oh boy.
No, I've not. And I just want to remind you, keep this in mind when you do watch his reaction, and you can check this out. I'll send you the link too. In 2014, he literally wrote a book calling for the prosecution of President Obama. So just keep all of that in mind, that 10 years ago.
Keep in mind that you know what Obama did that would be unreviewable? Mm-hmm. If Obama ordered the IRS to just tax conservatives, they shouldn't be able to review that action. In fact, they should fully say, well, hold on, we don't want to, infringe on the president's ability.
It's an executive branch agency,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Why the fuck would you have any review over that, right? Yeah, it's unbelievable, dude.
Yeah, so brace yourselves when you watch that.
Okay.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
What if Trump goes to jail but wins the election? What happens if New York refuses to release him? We have no clue. That's all uncharted territory.
All hell broke loose. It didn't break loose because of a Supreme Court decision. It broke loose because the left has decided, along with the media and the Democrats, but I repeat myself, to lie about the Supreme Court decision in order to revive the flagging hopes and dead body of Joe Biden. Let me begin at the beginning. Yesterday, the Supreme Court released a decision about presidential immunity. Now, this decision, of course, is rooted in Donald Trump filing a lawsuit to stop the various Jack Smith lawsuits against him. His claim was that as president of the United States, no matter what he did while he was president of the United States, he has full immunity from criminal prosecution. That, of course, is not true. That is a step too far. The idea that the president of the United States is never, for any activity, able to be criminally prosecuted is really silly. If the president of the United States decided that in his home, in the White House, he was just going to murder a maid, for example, could he be criminally prosecuted? The answer, of course, is yes. However, there is the idea that the president is, in fact, criminally immune from certain activities that a normal person would not be. So, for example, if I authorized somebody to go kill somebody abroad, I'd be criminally liable for that. If I'm president of the United States and as commander-in-chief, I authorize SEAL Team 6 to take out Osama bin Laden, I'm not going to be criminally liable for that. So there's plenty of stuff that the president of the United States...
What if you ordered SEAL Team 6 to kill your political opponent?
...has to be able to do in order to ensure the functioning of the executive authority of the United States. The president does have outsized powers under our Constitution. Those powers are not endless. Immunity is not eternal and endless. That is not the way that immunity works. And that's basically what the Supreme Court found. So in order to understand why the left is lying about this decision and why Joe Biden is lying about this decision and the political games that are now being played, you have to understand the decision itself from the Supreme Court. So I'm going to go through that decision in a little bit of detail because the sort of final effect of this as far as President Trump is that there are a couple of charges that Jack Smith has been pursuing that are basically DOA, and then there are several charges that are not DOA, and that will likely be upheld when this thing is reverted back to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, because that's effectively what the Supreme Court did. They took a couple of charges. They said the president has immunity for this sort of activity, and then they said about many of the other charges, we're not going to rule whether the president has immunity on this sort of activity. We instead are going to send it back to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals to determine whether the president has immunity. Judge Chutkan is the judge in that particular case. Presumably, she's going to rule that President Trump does not have immunity on those particular charges. So, in essence, this is a very in-between decision. Now, you could have known that by the fact that the writer of the decision was Chief Justice Roberts. Chief Justice Roberts is, in fact, a fairly moderate justice. He is not Justice Samuel Alito. He is not Justice Thomas. He is not one of the more right-wing members of the federal judiciary. Remember, it was just...
To be clear, I don't know anything about like when Pisco says like the center of the court is, I think he said Roberts, or I don't know anything about like the political leanings or whatever, but just from and I've only read probably 4 Supreme Court decisions like cover to cover my life because I haven't had Vyvanse for very long, but from my reading, I feel like Barrett seems to come off as more reasonable. Roberts' opinion in this case is fucking unhinged. If Roberts is truly the center of the court, I don't know how you square, or maybe just in this particular decision, he's been a little bit more off the hook, but I feel like his decision is wild here. It would be crazy to think that this is like a moderate conservative decision on what federal powers should look like, in my opinion, but...
Hello.
Hello?
Hey.
Hi. What's up?
I was meaning to jump on at some point. I was actually just curious to get your opinion on the Supreme Court judges and like specifically Kavanaugh and Barrett and whether you think they're like as bad as they...
I have not read anywhere near enough opinions to be able to give like good, accurate evaluations of their rulings. So I wouldn't even begin to be able to, I would never trust anything I would say on that,
Gotcha. No gut feeling vibe check?
I mean, I like most of what I've seen from Barrett so far. Obviously, Sotomayor, she likes to write a lot. She seems based, but also I'm a liberal, so I might disagree with her in general. Actually, I am a little bit salty that the 3 of them changed their dissenting in parts to concurrences over the 14th Amendment thing, but otherwise, I don't know enough about any of these people to give you a good legal evaluation.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no worries. Was just curious because I think, reading this Supreme Court decision, I'm kind of surprised that Barrett isn't more in line with what Roberts is, specifically because of the analysis you were talking about of people saying Roberts is a little bit more to the center. Because I think it's the case, right, that Barrett disagreed over the usage of the absolute immunity stuff for evidence for certain cases. Or have you not finished reading through it yet?
Nope, I'm still reading through it, but...
Okay, gotcha. I'll hop back on later.
Okay.
I
love you. Be careful. Bye. Can I just say that? Hold on. I can't tell if people know this. I need to not feel guilty doing this. I do feel bad doing it. I need to stop. I need to just start quizzing people more. It's such a bad, it's a mean debate tactic. It's a mean debate tactic, but I need to just start doing it more. Because people do it to me. And I think that when people do it to me, you can quiz me because I know what the I'm talking about, but I don't know if the audience is always understanding what's happened. We can't see. Yeah, I know. Hold on. Where is the link to the Michael Knowles thing? Where he tries to ask me, he's like, did you read the ruling? First of all, by the way, this ruling had come out like 2 hours earlier. It's 120 pages. I don't think he read even a single page of this. Okay, bullshit. But
Destiny, yes,
to
the
be clear,
Democrats
that is
are upset. They're
not true. This is
just
based
let me
on
finish
precedent.
1 second, Destiny. They're inveighing because they say we should be talking about the immunity case. Well, but part of the articulation of I just was reading the decision was that look, this is the first time that you've got a president who's being prosecuted in this way, and that's the problem because the vast majority of Americans, right, left, and center, have been saying in survey after survey that they view the prosecutions of Trump as primarily politically motivated. They view this as kind of corrupt. And that's one of the reasons why Biden's poll numbers have been so bad for so long. And so they throw this Hail Mary to do a debate in June before either party has settled on a nominee. And it completely blew up in their face. And so no wonder people want to talk about it. You've got a political order that is fraying. You've got a guy trying to put his opponent into an orange jumpsuit. And it turns out the guy who's trying to do that has applesauce for brains. No wonder people
you know
are
what the
concerned.
American people, a bit like the British,
Wait, what's it not here?
the first ethic and you go, where we are with this. What do you think?
Replace Joe. Yeah.
And that's right. So
His guidance that this has been articulated by Joe Biden, and that should be able to put.
Come to you, then come back to Tom.
Like how to seat a judge.
Democrat side. That's going to be polarizing. Is on
the way, but if what you want.
He sucks.
So someone else is running the country, whether that's Jill.
Control F20 or 25 pages. Oh wait, maybe it was over here. Hold on.
To bring in a bunch of, I don't know, drug dealers and hookers or something, that would probably be an unofficial crime, not related to his duties as president. And the reason that this matters, and why it's really a moderate decision, is because it goes back about 40 years.
Oh, he says it's a moderate. Okay.
Execution.
You do a. Have you read the decision?
What that act? No, it's just partial immunity for official act.
He did it. Hold on. I'm sorry. I just thought it was funny that.
What is an official act of the president? If you actually listen to the oral arguments that were presented before the Supreme Court, what that act even is and the ability to even probe for it is stuff right now that is now presumed to be immune. For instance, just a real quick thing. When Donald Trump is asking Pence, hey, can you throw out the election because I don't like the results, which is a real thing that happened, by the way, as much as I would like to say that's not true, that is counted as an official action because these are the roles of the president and vice president, deciding how to count the electoral votes. That is insanity to me. If Biden were to do anything even remotely similar, Republicans would lose their minds.
Have you read the decision? I know it just came out this morning, but have you gone through the decision yet?
So the really funny thing is that if he would have read, so now that I've read the entire decision, I actually gave not the best example because the example that I gave is the one that Robert said would get presumptive immunity. The absolute immunity example I should have given was the attorney general conversation, not the conversation between Trump and Pence. So I know he hasn't read the decision at this point now because he wasn't able to give that counterexample to me when we spoke. But my example is so good enough. It's, suffice to say the presumptive immunity would have been similar enough to be used here. But he hasn't read it at all, so he can't even give that counterargument. But it's funny that, so he asks me this to try to get me to say, like, oh, I'm just a liberal. I can't read.
I read up to page 25, and part of it, I can read it out to you.
And then he laughed. Oh, you only read up to 25? You only read up to page 25? Like he's laughing, like he's read the whole 120 pages in the hour before we went live.
I read up to page 25, and part of it, I can read it out to you. He explicitly calls out that whenever the president and vice president discuss their official responsibilities, they engage in official conduct, meaning that presiding over the January 6th certification proceeding, which members count, yes, so that did count as official conduct. So if you thought that he was trying to do a coup, try to steal the election by saying, hey, do you think you can throw those votes out? Well, that's beyond prosecution.
You can dispute or object to any action.
Clearly, he has not read it, and now he's fucking. But I don't know if people recognize what's happening here. When things like this are happening, he's shit testing me to see if I even knew what I was talking about, or if he could get me to admit. He's like playing chicken with me, right? He's like, "Oh, have you actually read it?" It's like, yeah. Here's like a part that I'm referencing when I say that. He's like,
you can dispute or object to any actions that Trump takes, but it is simply the case that when a president is carrying out his.
But yeah, if people are going to do this to me, I should just do it back to them. Tell me what was your takeaway from that? But anyway, I feel like it makes me an asshole when I do it. I don't know. Anyway, when they quiz you, you answer succinctly and honestly. When you ask them even a basic question, they use it as an excuse to yap, yap, yap and dodge to something else. You must keep interrupting them even if they bitch about it. I can't, on Pierre's, I get like, he'll cut you off if you're like interrupting too much. They don't like it when you do it too much. So I was trying in this conversation, but there are multiple times you can hear like my mic gets lowered and then Pierce keeps talking. I have to basically, yeah. But anyway, okay, sorry. It's taking us days to get through this. All right.